Greetings everyone and welcome back to 365 Days of Prog. Today we're gonna be reviewing The Magician's Birthday by Uriah Heep.
Hi, my name's Naomi. I'm an avid progressive rock fan, but I'm a long ways from knowing all the prog albums out there. But this year, I'm gonna give it a try. This is 365 Days of Prog.
You wait until you hear all my favorite bits from this album. I really can't wait to hear some of my favorite bits from this album. Yeah, I only have one favorite bit from this album, and honestly it's not that special. It's pretty fun. But if you're not ready for my take on this album and the fact that I didn't really like a lot from it, you better leave the video, right now. But if you've soldiered on and you're still here, welcome to this video. We're gonna talk about The Magician's Birthday by Uriah Heep. This one came out in 1972, and the last time we reviewed Uriah Heep on this channel was actually in episode 41. It's like a lot more than 100 episodes ago. Like, what the hell is going on? And we reviewed Demons and Wizards. Now, as I listened to this album, like, memories from the last time I listened to their music with Demons and Wizards just, came popping into my head. I remember myself sitting in a train going, I really don't know where, but I had my headphones on and I listened to this album, and it was by a band that I've never heard but heard of, and I really wanted to get to know them, and I experienced a lot of things whilst listening to that other album. And I remember myself sitting there and, I was in the start of this series. We've been like a month into this series by that point, and I was listening to this band which I knew were very critically acclaimed, and I probably rated their songs pretty higher than I should have because, I wanted them to be good, but all in all I really didn't kind of enjoy the music that much, and I unfortunately ended up giving the album a 5, which a lot of people didn't like and disagree with, but at the same time I feel kind of good that I did it and wasn't really acting up to be as if I liked this album when in actuality I kind of didn't. And the experience I had with Demons and Wizards kind of reflects on the experience I had with The Magician's Birthday as well. But there's one thing which I did, and I did very wrongly when I made the video about Demons and Wizards, and that's, well, I wasn't going off a script. Now, usually I go off a script, and when I say usually, I mean 99.9% of the time. I only had one video ever which I did like on the fly without a script. I tried my luck at it, maybe it would have worked, but it definitely didn't, and that was episode 41 about Demons and Wizards. And I know that despite me not liking that album, it should at least have been given some good representation on a video. I should have done my research, I should have written a script so I know what I talk about in the video, but I just didn't do that. So today with this album, despite not loving it all that much, I wrote a script. I have it right here. Everything that I'm saying right now is technically scripted, and I'm gonna give it justice. So this album, much like the predecessor Demons and Wizards, is considered to have one of the best lineups Uriah Heep has ever seen. So we of course have David Byrne on vocals, Mick Box on various guitars, Ken Hensley is on keyboards, Gary Thanes on bass, and lastly we have Lee Kerslake on the drums. All of these names that I just told you, they basically mean nothing to me. I have no idea who these guys are, but I get that they're really great musicians. But let's hope I at least said them correctly. And the love that people in the progressive community have for this album honestly pretty much baffles me. Like, I really don't know what do you like about this one and how do you find this one to be progressive. If you like hard rock, I totally get it. Hard contemporary rock, there's a lot of good songs on here for you. But if you like progressive rock, progressive hard rock, I really don't know what you find on this one. Like, can you honestly, like anyone watching this video and misunderstanding me for why I don't like this album, can honestly come up with a straight face to me and tell me that songs like Sunrise, Spider-Woman, or Sweet Lorraine aren't just your contemporary hard rock songs. Like, these songs could have easily been written by a band like Steppenwolf or even Lynyrd Skynyrd. The only song I really enjoyed on this album has to be Rain, and I don't think it's because it's really a great song, it's just just very unexpected and unrelated to anything that goes on here, and seeing as I really didn't like a lot of what this album had to offer, at least Rain was something new and special, and I could take some comfort in that. Like, I really don't know how from the hard drums, guitar riffs, power chords, bass, we went on into this like very, you know, solo Hammond organ, some vibraphone and vocals song, which really sounds kind of nice in my opinion. It's, you know, it's not, you know, the epic of all songs ever, but you know, it's fine, and it's very, very different from what this entire album has to offer, and I can only imagine what would have happened if they actually made an album sounding more like Rain. So if anyone watching this video actually knows of another Uriah Heep album that is more like that song in particular and not like their signature sound, I'd actually love to know that. But I can hear you all screaming at me, I've mentioned every song on this album except for one, and that has to be the title track with its very prestigious 10.5 minutes of runtime. So let's talk about this one. I personally, despite thinking that it's, you know, a pretty fine song, unfortunately felt kind of cheated by it. So this song actually starts off pretty great. It has a really interesting melodical passage that leads us into a literal magician's birthday. Like a literal magician's birthday. That's what I would expect a magician's birthday to sound like. And you know, I really like the quirky kazoo parts. It kind of sound like the shit that Pink Floyd did in their beginning, you know, stages. But then we reach the part where I kind of felt cheated by the music on here. We get a crossfade. We don't get any intricate, you know, play of instruments, you know, moving scales and doing something. No, we get a crossfade, a little crossfade from the song we've had so far into 6.5 minutes of improvisation, which is totally unremarkably unrelated to the entire song up until this point. And you know, I'll be honest with you, the improvisation part, it's fine, it's nice, I kind of enjoyed it, but it doesn't have anything to do with what came before it. And the most infuriating part, you know how they ended this song off? With yet another crossfade. They just crossfaded back into, like, you know, the last verse and chorus of this song, and it just kind of feels you've taken this one really short song, let's say like 3-minute long song, and you were like, oh, you know what, we have more time on the album, so we should do something. So they just went into the studio, they improvised for 6.5 minutes, and then they just, you know, very non-seamlessly stitched it inside and called that, you know, a big epic. And it's not the case. It's really like a cheap knockoff of what prog is actually, you know, supposed to be. I'm like getting infuriated by this song. It's like, you know, I'm being cheated. It's a pretty fine song which just in its essence mocks progressive rock, and I don't like that. So to conclude, much like yesterday's episode of This Was by Jethro Tull, I do believe that this album as well, The Magician's Birthday, isn't a progressive rock album at all. But unlike Uriah Heep, at least Jethro Tull didn't try and make a progressive rock album, and they just made their own thing, because this album in its essence really shouldn't be considered as prog, and when it does get proggy, it just kind of takes the lazy approach to prog, and I really don't appreciate that at all. This cover, on the other hand, is something quite different. Much like the last album of Demons and Wizards, this cover was also made by the mythological cover maker for progressive rock. Of course, he is Roger Dean. But this cover, unlike the last one, feels more like a Dean cover in the way that he represents a very abstract world that feels parallel to ours, like something that could have happened but kind of didn't. And I think that he delivers this concept on this album swimmingly. I always love myself a good, very ambient feeling cover by Roger Dean, where he just paints unearthly landscapes all over the place, but I much prefer his covers that actually deal with a subject or some subjects. That's why I kind of like the cover for Demons and Wizards, because it had very distinct subjects, and so does this one, much like covers, you know, like Fragile with the boat floating on top of like this earthly planet, or let's say The Cathedral, which is actually a rocket in Ramses' space hymns, and this one also features who I can only assume is the magician, and he seems like he's dueling some really evil force.
You have small PP. Shut up, loser, let's duel.
I don't know if my audience is definitely the type of people who would understand this reference, but for some reason this antagonist that is featured like as a part of the background, which looks kind of evil, also reminds me of Skull Kid from Legend of Zelda's Majora's Mask, so I'm gonna show a picture of it. I don't know why it reminds me of it, it just does. Now this cover is not what I'd imagine if someone told me The Magician's Birthday. I'd imagine something, you know, much more magical in its essence and much more quirky and colorful in other ways. But this is a very unique representation of that idea, and I believe that only truly Roger Dean could have thought up something like this. And you know, don't even get me started on the high contrast of everything and the stark colors. They're very vibrant. Everything about this cover really looks nice. I wouldn't say that it's an absolute favorite of mine, but I can very much objectively appreciate a lot of things, if not everything about it. Hey, at least we're ending this off on a good note, because I told you what I like about this album, and that's not the music, it's the cover. But when it comes to the rating of this one, I do believe that this one is slightly better than Demons and Wizards overall, so it's getting the very acute rating of 6 out of 10. But that's about it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for tomorrow's episode, because it seems like recently and in the future episodes we're getting to see some very, you know, big names in the prog scene showing on here. And in tomorrow's episode we're gonna review Van der Graaf Generator's H to E, Who Am the Only One. I'm very excited for that one, but that's about all. I want to thank my lovely supporter over on Patreon, so thank you so much to Clay Waldham. You are the best, and if any of you want to support me over on Patreon, you can find the link down in the description or in my about page. I usually do the down in the description with this hand, but today I did something different. So yeah, that's about it, guys. Have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.